From Stranger to Family, My Journey with the Alien Princess and Her Mother. Echoes in the woods. Elias Voss trudged along the forest path, the fallen leaves crunching beneath his boots. 3 years since the accident. 3 years since Maya's death, and the world still felt hollowed out. The forest preserve on the edge of New Portland was one of the last true green spaces on Earth, and he'd chosen it for its silence, its isolation. Perfect for a man who'd once mapped stars but now couldn't bear to look up at them. His cabin came into view between the trees. Simple, sturdy, surrounded by scientific equipment repurposed for monitoring the local ecosystem instead of distant galaxies. The university still funded his research, minimal as it was. They called it compassionate reassignment. He called it exile. The first anomaly registered on his equipment just after midnight. Elias, nursing a glass of whiskey, almost ignored it. Another satellite falling, perhaps, or a meteorite. But the pattern was wrong. Deceleration, course correction, the unmistakable signature of propulsion. Someone or something was landing and not far from his cabin. By the time he reached the impact site, dawn was breaking. A deep furrow cut through the forest floor, ending at a gleaming object half buried among the trees. Not a meteorite, not even human technology. The vessel's hull was seamless, with an iridescent surface that seemed to breathe with light. "Hello?" Elias called, his voice strange in the morning quiet. "Is anyone—" The hull split open with a soft hiss. Inside, bathed in an amber glow, lay 2 figures. The first, a woman with long silver hair and ashen purple skin, appeared unconscious, her breathing shallow. Beside her knelt a younger woman, her hand protectively on the elder's chest. She looked up at Elias with eyes like violet nebulae. "Please," she said in perfect English, though her lips formed different shapes than the sounds he heard. "My mother is dying." Elias stood frozen, the scientist in him cataloging details, the subtle phosphorescence of their skin, the geometric patterns embedded in their clothing, the impossible fluid grace as the younger woman moved toward him. "I am Niara of the Lunari," she said. "This is Queen Talira, my mother. Our ship was damaged escaping our pursuers. We need shelter." Elias found his voice. "I'm Elias, I live nearby. I can help." Carrying the unconscious queen between them, they made their way back to his cabin. Every few steps, Niara would whisper something in a language like music, and her mother's breathing would stabilize momentarily. "What's wrong with her?" Elias asked as they laid Queen Talira on his bed. "Our people share a telepathic bond," Niara explained, her fingers gently tracing patterns on her mother's forehead. "When our home was attacked, many died. Each death tore at her mind. She is fragmented. And why Earth? Why here?" Niara's gaze met his, and for a moment Elias felt a whisper of something brush against his consciousness, like fingers testing the surface of water. "Because you were here," she said simply. "We followed an echo, a resonance. Mother said someone here would understand us." That night, as Queen Talira slept fitfully and Niara kept watch, Elias found himself drawn to his old telescope. For the first time in years, he pointed it toward the stars, searching for a purple world he couldn't possibly see. "You lost someone," Niara said from the doorway, making him jump. "I can feel the void around you." Elias turned from the telescope. "My fiancé, a car accident. 3 years ago." Niara approached, her movements liquid in the darkness. "Among my people, when someone dies, they become part of the collective consciousness. No one is ever truly lost." "That's not how it works here," Elias said, his voice rougher than he intended. "No," Niara agreed, her hand hovering near his but not touching. "But perhaps it should be." Healing light dawn broke over the forest with misty fingers of light that slipped through Elias's cabin windows. He woke to find Niara seated cross-legged beside her mother's bed, a soft humming emanating from her throat. As he watched, thin strands of violet light seemed to flow between the 2 Lunari women. "It's called Thalmera," Niara explained without turning. "Soul sharing. I'm giving her fragments of my consciousness to replace what she's lost." Elias approached cautiously. "Is that safe for you?" "Necessary," she replied simply. Her eyes, when she finally looked at him, were dimmer than before, the nebulae within them less vibrant. "On our world, this would be shared among many. Here, I am her only anchor." Over the next few days, a rhythm developed between them. Elias would gather herbs from the forest that resembled those Niara described from her homeworld. She would process them into tinctures for her mother, teaching Elias the healing traditions of the Lunari. Your people understand so much about the physical universe, she told him one evening as they sat on the cabin's porch, but so little about the consciousness that perceives it. And your people? We believe consciousness is the primary force of reality. What you call physics, we call the dreaming of stars. Elias smiled skeptically. That doesn't explain how your ship traveled between solar systems, doesn't it? Nyara's lips curved upward. When two minds align perfectly, distance becomes optional. Inside, Queen Talira stirred and called out in the musical Lunari language. Nyara responded and moved to her side. She's asking about you, Nyara said. She wants to meet the one who shelters us. Elias approached the bed hesitantly. Queen Talira's eyes opened, deeper violet than her daughter's with flecks of silver like distant galaxies. Elias Voss, she said, her voice surprisingly strong. Your grief echoes across light years. He stiffened. I don't understand. When souls are wounded deeply, they call to each other. The Queen's hand reached for his, surprisingly warm. You called. We answered. I didn't call anyone, Elias protested. Not consciously. Queen Talira smiled. But your heart has been broadcasting loss since your mate's passing. It guided us when our navigation failed. That night, unable to sleep, Elias found Nyara outside staring at the stars. Without his permission, his scientist's mind cataloged the differences between them. Her slightly elongated fingers, the subtle luminescence of her skin in moonlight, the way her chest rose and fell in a rhythm slightly faster than human normal. You're analyzing me, she observed without turning. Sorry, he muttered. Professional habit. Don't apologize for curiosity. When she turned, there was amusement in her eyes. I've been studying you too. And what have you learned? That humans hide their connections, even from themselves. She stepped closer. May I show you something? At his nod, she raised her hand to his face, not quite touching. Close your eyes. Elias hesitated, then complied. Immediately a warmth spread from where her hand hovered near his skin, flowing through his mind like sunlight through water. Images flickered. A purple world with 3 moons, cities built from crystal and living wood, and thousands of minds linked in a dance of shared consciousness. This is Lunari, she whispered. This is how we see. When he opened his eyes, tears streaked his cheeks. That's extraordinary. It's home, she said simply. Or it was. What happened? The Vicari happened. They believe consciousness should be controlled, harvested. They came with weapons that severed our connections. Her voice broke. So many minds suddenly silenced. Mother felt each one. Without thinking, Elias took her hand. The contact sent a shock through him. Not unpleasant, but intense, like touching a live wire that carried emotion instead of electricity. I'm sorry, he said. As am I for your loss, she replied, her fingers tentatively intertwining with his. They stood in silence, watching the stars, their hands linked. Something shifted between them. A barrier dissolving, a bridge forming. In the cabin, unknown to either of them, Queen Talira smiled in her sleep as she sensed the first tendrils of connection forming between her daughter and the human who had called to them across the void. Shadows from beyond the warning came at twilight, 3 weeks after the Lunari arrival. Elias's repurposed astronomical equipment began, registering anomalies in Earth's upper atmosphere, energy, signatures that matched nothing in his databases but resonated with patterns from Nyara's vessel. They've found us, Nyara said, her voice tight as she studied the readings. The Vicari hunters. Queen Talira, now strong enough to sit in a chair by the window, closed her eyes. 4 ships, small but deadly. They seek the royal mine pattern. How long do we have? Elias asked, already calculating escape routes, supplies they would need. 3 days, perhaps 4, the Queen answered. They must triangulate our exact position. That night, Elias found himself unable to sleep, pacing the perimeter of his cabin. The forest that had once felt like sanctuary now seemed filled with shadows and watching eyes. When Nyara joined him, her presence was like a lantern in darkness. If I leave, she said quietly, they will follow me and spare your world. And what happens to you then? Elias's voice was sharper than intended. Capture. Mind stripping. My consciousness harvested to power their engines. She said it with such calm resignation that Elias felt physically ill. That's not an option, he said firmly. Nyara touched his arm, sending that now familiar current through him. Over the weeks, their casual contacts had increased. Hands brushing while preparing meals, shoulders touching as they worked on repairing components from her ship. Each touch deepened something between them, a resonance that Elias couldn't name but increasingly craved. "There is another possibility," she said hesitantly, "but it would require more from you than I have any right to ask." Before she could explain, Queen Talira called them inside. She sat straight-backed in her chair, more regal than Elias had yet seen her. "The Vicari track royal mind patterns," she said, "but they cannot differentiate between Lunari royalty and a true star bond." "Mother, no," Nyara protested. "He's not ready." "What's a star bond?" Elias asked. Queen Talira's eyes fixed on him. "Among our people, certain souls form connections that transcend normal boundaries. These bonds register to Vicari sensors as royal patterns. They cannot tell the difference. You're saying we could confuse them?" Elias looked between mother and daughter. "If you and Nyara form such a bond, yes," the queen confirmed. "But it is not a simple matter of deception. A star bond is permanent, deep. It would link aspects of your consciousness forever." Elias felt his heart rate accelerate. "And if we don't do this?" "Then I must leave immediately," Nyara said, her expression pained. "And hope they follow me away from Earth." That evening, as rain drummed against the cabin roof, Elias found Nyara in the small workshop where they'd been studying components from her ship. Her fingers traced patterns on a crystal module that pulsed with inner light. "Tell me about this bond," he said quietly. Nyara didn't pretend to misunderstand. "It would join us in ways your language has no words for. You would feel echoes of my emotions, glimpses of my thoughts. I would feel yours, like mind reading." "No," she smiled faintly. "More like always knowing the shape of someone else's heart, even across galaxies." Elias moved closer. "Would it hurt? The formation?" "No, it feels like—" She hesitated. "Like coming home to a place you've always known but never visited." His hand covered hers on the crystal. "And after Maya, my fiancée, would I still feel her loss?" "Yes," Nyara said honestly. "But it would sit beside something new, not replace it." Outside, thunder rolled across the forest. Inside, something vast and inevitable seemed to be unfolding between them. "I don't want you to leave," Elias admitted. The words feeling torn from him, Nyara's free hand rose to his face, her touch feather-light. "Then ask me to stay." The crystal beneath their joined hands began to pulse in rhythm with their heartbeats as Elias leaned forward, crossing the final distance between worlds. Heart harmonies, morning light filtered through the cabin windows, casting prismatic patterns across the floor where Elias sat with Nyara. Between them lay a small crystal, basin filled with water that reflected their bases, his human features alongside her violet Lunari ones, both transformed by what had transpired between them the previous night. "The connection has begun," Queen Talira observed from her chair. She was stronger today, her silver-flecked eyes sharper. "I can see the tendrils forming between your auras." Elias felt it too, a subtle awareness of Nyara that hadn't existed before. Not thoughts exactly, but impressions. Her concern for her mother, her fascination with Earth's dense atmosphere, her growing warmth toward him. "Is this how all Lunari feel?" he asked. "Connected to everyone?" "No." Nyara's fingers brushed the water, sending ripples across their reflected faces. "We sense our people as a collective presence, but this," she gestured between them, "this is different, personal, rare even among Lunari." Queen Talira nodded. "The star bond forms between complementary souls. It cannot be forced or manufactured, which means the Vicari will believe it," Elias concluded, "because it's real." The words hung in the air between them. Real. Not just a strategy for survival, but something authentic taking root. Later that day, Nyara took Elias deeper into the forest than they'd ventured before, to a small clearing where sunlight dappled the ground. Here she began teaching him the ceremonial movements that would strengthen their nascent bond. "Among my people, this dance is performed over many days," she explained, demonstrating a fluid motion that reminded Elias of Tai Chi. "But we must compress it." As they moved together, mirroring each other's gestures, Elias found himself increasingly aware of Nyara's presence in his mind, a gentle purple light that pulsed alongside his own consciousness. When their hands met in the dance, images flowed between them. Niara saw the observatory where Elias had once worked, the car accident that had taken Maya from him. Elias glimpsed crystalline cities on distant worlds, felt the psychic shock when the Vicari attack severed thousands of Lunari minds from the collective. "I'm sorry," he whispered, both for what her people had suffered, and for the intensity of his own grief that she now felt. "Don't be," she replied, her eyes luminous. Sharing pain is the beginning of healing it. That evening, as they returned to the cabin, they found Queen Talira standing unaided, gazing at Elias's astronomical equipment with keen interest. "The Vicari ships have changed course," she announced. "They sense the star bond forming and are confused. It gives us time but not safety." "How long until they realize what we've done?" Elias asked. "A few days at most. Then they will come with greater determination." The Queen turned to face them fully. "The bond must be completed before then." Niara's hand found Elias's, their fingers intertwining. Through their connection, he felt her apprehension mixed with something deeper, a longing that mirrored his own. "The final stage requires complete harmony," Niara explained softly. "Physical and mental alignment." That night, as moonlight silvered the trees outside, Elias and Niara sat facing each other on his bed. The room was illuminated only by the natural phosphorescence of her skin and the gentle glow of Lunari crystals placed in a circle around them. "Are you certain?" Niara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Once completed, this cannot be undone." Elias thought of Maya, of the life they'd planned together, of the grief that had driven him to this forest sanctuary. Then he looked at Niara, alien yet increasingly familiar, different yet perfectly complementary to his own being. "I'm certain," he said. Their lips met gently at first, then with increasing urgency. Where their skin touched, light seemed to flow between them, violet from her to him, golden from him to her. The boundaries between their minds thinned, memories and emotions flowing freely. Elias saw Niara's childhood on a world with 3 moons, felt her royal training that had taught her to hold part of herself separate from the collective, understood her fear and hope when their ship had crashed on Earth. Niara experienced his human childhood, his passion for astronomy, the devastating loss of Maya that had nearly broken him. As their bodies entwined, the crystal circle around them began to pulse with increasing intensity, physical sensation blended with psychic connection, each touch amplified by their mental joining. They moved together in perfect synchrony, guided by their deepening bond. In that moment of ultimate connection, something new was born between them, a shared consciousness that was neither human nor Lunari but something entirely unique. The star bond flared to completion, linking them across levels of reality neither had fully understood before. After, as they lay together in the silvery darkness, Elias could feel Niara's presence in his mind like a second heartbeat. "I never imagined," he murmured, "that I could feel this again. Different, but just as real." "Among my people," Niara said, her head resting against his chest, "we have a saying. The universe conspires to heal broken souls." Elias smiled. "On Earth, we call that destiny." Outside the cabin, Queen Talira stood beneath the stars, her face lifted to the heavens. Through her recovered telepathic abilities, she sensed the completed bond between her daughter and the human, a beacon that would both draw their enemies and perhaps offer salvation none of them had dared hope for. Cosmic choices. The Vicari ships entered Earth's atmosphere at midnight, 4 dark silhouettes against the star-filled sky. Elias tracked their descent on his equipment while Queen Talira monitored them telepathically. Niara stood between them, one hand on her mother's shoulder, the other clasped in Elias's. "They're confused," the Queen reported. "The star bond registers to them as something they've never encountered, more powerful than a royal signature, but different." Through their connection, Elias felt Niara's tension, her readiness for battle. "How long until they find us?" "Hours, perhaps less." Queen Talira rose with newfound strength. "We must make our decision now." They had discussed the options for days: flee deeper into Earth's wilderness, attempt to repair Niara's ship and escape the planet, or confront the hunters directly. Each choice carried impossible risks. "If we stay, we endanger your world," Niara reminded Elias. though she knew he felt her reluctance to leave through their bond. "If you go, you face them alone," he countered. Queen Talira moved to the center of the room, her regal bearing fully restored. "There is another possibility, one I have been considering since your bond completed." Both turned to her expectantly. "The strength of your connection has restored much of what I lost," she explained. "I can now reach the Lunari Collective across the void. Our people are regrouping, rebuilding. You want to call them here?" Nyara asked, alarmed. "No." The Queen's eyes gleamed with purpose. "I want to show them what you and Elias have created. A bond between species, a new kind of consciousness. It could change everything." Elias felt the weight of her words. How would that help against the Vakari now? A fully realized star bond, freely chosen between different species. It creates a psychic resonance that even the Vakari cannot breach. The Queen's voice gained intensity. "If you both commit completely to this union, allow it to reach its full potential, the resulting harmonic could disable their weapons." Nyara's eyes widened. "You're suggesting a Thalvaris?" She turned to Elias. "A complete soul merging. It's almost never done, even among Lunari. The individuals remain separate but become something more together." Through their connection, Elias felt what she couldn't articulate. The magnitude of such a commitment, the irreversible nature of it, the potential power and vulnerability it would create. "Would it hurt?" he asked, echoing his question from days earlier. This time, Nyara smiled. "No, but it would change us both forever." Outside, the distant hum of Vakari engines became audible. Time was running out. In the center of the cabin, they created a circle of crystals salvaged from Nyara's ship. Queen Talira positioned herself at the northern point, channeling her recovered telepathic abilities to form a protective barrier around them. Elias and Nyara sat facing each other within the circle, their hands joined, foreheads touching. "Focus on our connection," Nyara instructed softly. "Feel where it leads." Elias closed his eyes. The bond between them glowed in his mind's eye, a bridge of light connecting their separate consciousnesses. But now, guided by Nyara and supported by the Queen, he perceived something more, a deeper potential, a doorway that had remained closed until now. As they breathed in unison, that door began to open. Memories flowed freely between them, not just glimpses now, but complete experiences. Elias lived Nyara's first flight among the crystal spires of her homeworld. She experienced his first discovery of a new comet through his observatory telescope. The boundaries between them became permeable, then transparent. "I see them," Queen Talira warned. "They've found us." The cabin walls seemed to vibrate with approaching energy as Vakari weapons prepared to fire. But within the crystal circle, something extraordinary was happening. The soul merging had created a third presence. Not Elias, not Nyara, but a consciousness formed from their union that expanded outward with increasing power. Through this new awareness, they sensed the Vakari ships, the hunters' minds focused on capturing the royal telepathic signature. Together, Elias and Nyara projected their harmonized consciousness toward the hunters. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Vakari weapons, designed to sever telepathic connections, could not target the unique frequency of their bond. Instead, the energy rebounded, cascading through the Vakari ship's systems. Outside, the forest lit up with sudden flares of light as the hunters' vessels lost power and control. "Now," Queen Talira commanded, her own telepathic abilities joining with their merged consciousness. Together, the three of them pushed outward, a wave of harmonized energy that overwhelmed the Vakari hunters' minds. When it was over, when the forest fell silent again, Elias and Nyara slowly separated, physically, but not mentally. Their connection remained stronger than before, a constant awareness of each other that would never fade. "They're retreating," Queen Talira announced, her voice tinged with wonder. "And more. I sense confusion in their minds. What you created, they've never encountered its like. It disrupted their certainties." Dawn broke over the forest as they stepped outside to confirm what the Queen had felt. In the distance, the damaged Vakari ships were ascending, fleeing Earth's atmosphere. It won't end here, Nyara cautioned, her hand tight in Elias's. They will return, or others will come. Yes, Queen Talira agreed. But not as conquerors. What you two have created has changed the equation. The Vakari sought to harvest consciousness. You have shown them that consciousness freely shared creates power they cannot control. Elias looked at the sky, then at the woman beside him, alien yet now as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. Through their bond he felt her conflicting desires, duty to her people, love for him, concern for her mother, fascination with Earth. Where do we go from here? He asked softly. Queen Talira smiled. That is the question that all families must answer together. Nyara's gaze met his, violet nebulae depths that now contained echoes of his own consciousness. The stars, she said simply. And then home. Wherever we decide that is. As the sun rose fully over the forest, casting golden light across the clearing, the three of them stood together. Not human, not alien, but family forged across galaxies. The repaired ship would soon be ready, Earth and Lunari both waiting for them and countless stars between. Elias, who had once been afraid to look at the stars after losing everything, now found himself eager to explore them. Not as an astronomer, charting distant points of light, but as part of something greater. A cosmic family finding its way in a universe suddenly rich with new possibilities.